What is the purpose of life? What happens after death? Why do we exist if everything is destined to end, to dissolve like dust in the wind? These are questions that have tormented humanity since its very beginnings, inquiries that resonate through the ages, etched in the heart of every human being. Questions that sometimes assail us in the silence of the night, when the lights of day fade and the incessant noise of the world subsides, leaving us alone with our deepest thoughts. And that, paradoxically, can arise with even greater force precisely when, apparently, we have conquered everything that society indicates as goals. The money that promises security, the success that feeds the ego, the love that seems to complete our existence. Yet often, deep within our being, we feel a restlessness, a void that not even the most brilliant achievements seem to fill, a sense of incompleteness that drives us to seek something more. Today we embark on a journey that will lead us to explore the extraordinary path of a man who faced these questions with a rarely seen intensity, a man who dared to gaze into the abyss of existence without ever losing hope. Leo Tolstoy, not only one of the greatest writers of all time, but also an untiring seeker of truth. Born in 1828 in a privileged setting within a noble Russian family, immersed in the luxury and prestige of the aristocracy, Tolstoy had at his disposal every material comfort, every opportunity that the society of his time could offer. His childhood, spent amidst the splendor of imposing estates and the rigorous education of private tutors, would seem to paint a picture of an existence destined for happiness without shadows. Yet from a young age, a deep unease was perceived in him, a latent dissatisfaction that manifested itself through a divided soul. On the one hand, the attraction to worldly pleasures, the intoxication of gambling, the fleeting joys of fleeting and superficial relationships. On the other, a strong moral conscience, an innate sense of justice that led him to continuous feelings of guilt, to a perennial inner struggle between what his heart desired and what his reason deemed right. The early literary successes, with works like Childhood, Boyhood, and The Cossacks, were only a prelude to what would come later, but already revealed his ability to penetrate the human soul with a disconcerting depth. Marriage to Sophia Behrs, a woman younger than him, brought a sense of family stability to his life, and the birth of 13 children seemed to complete the picture of a fulfilled life. But it was above all the literary success, particularly with the publication of War and Peace in 1869, a monumental epic that revolutionized Russian narrative, and with Anna Karenina in 1877, a profound analysis of human passion and tragedy that consecrated him as a giant of world literature, one of the greatest storytellers in history. Yet despite the fame, the wealth accumulated thanks to his writings and family love, Tolstoy was profoundly unhappy. He felt an inner void that nothing seemed to fill, a dissatisfaction that manifested itself like a worm gnawing at his soul. This void, this sense of alienation from the world, led him, at the age of 50, to a devastating existential crisis, a dark night of the soul that would change him forever. Everything that once gave him joy and security, every pleasure that had attracted him, now seemed vain, meaningless, like pale illusions that dissolve at the sunrise. The days lost their color, their charm, and every action seemed useless to him. A mechanical gesture devoid of purpose, an empty echo in the silence of the universe. Tolstoy described this dark period of his existence in his work A Confession, a painful and brutal document of a soul in crisis, an autopsy of his consciousness. In those intimate and revealing pages, Tolstoy bared his deepest reflections, his most lacerating doubts, the sleepless nights spent contemplating the possibility of ending his life, of throwing himself into the abyss of oblivion. The thought of ending his existence haunted him with an almost irresistible force, like a shadow that stretched menacingly on his path. He confessed to having had to deceive himself, to have had to erect mental barriers so as not to succumb to despair, taking refuge in temporary distractions and subterfuges to appease his anguish. But he knew that these were just palliatives, precarious solutions that could not soothe his inner wound. Tolstoy's crisis was not just a personal matter, an individual torment, but an intellectual and spiritual search, a journey to discover the meaning of existence. He decided not to surrender to despair, not to succumb to the abyss, and to face the great questions of humanity directly, with all the rigor of his mind and the passion of his heart. He began a journey through the pages of philosophy and science, seeking an answer that could quench his thirst for truth. He studied with dedication the works of the great thinkers, from Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, to Buddha, the enlightened Eastern master, to Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism. He sought in them a key, an illuminating principle, an idea that could give meaning to the enigma of life. But their answers, while illuminated by profound wisdom, only increased his bewilderment, his confusion. Schopenhauer, with his pessimistic vision of life, a reality dominated by blind will and inevitable suffering, made him feel even more trapped in a circle of nihilism, an endless spiral of despair. Even Buddha's teachings, while offering a path to liberation from suffering through overcoming desire and awareness of impermanence, appeared to him as a renunciation, an escape from reality rather than a true solution. Disappointed with philosophy, Tolstoy turned to science, hoping that the rational and empirical approach could offer more concrete, more tangible answers. He studied the theories of Darwin, which had revolutionized our understanding of the origin of life, and other scientific discoveries of his time. But these too left him unsatisfied. Science, while accurately describing the mechanisms of nature, the how of the world, failed to answer the questions that were closest to his heart: the why of existence, the origin of suffering, the destiny of man. The scientific view reduced human existence to a struggle for survival, to a mere product of biological chance, denying any possibility of transcendence, any deeper meaning. In his relentless search, Tolstoy identified 4 ways in which people try to cope with the absurdity of life, 4 responses that humanity has developed over the centuries to give meaning to meaninglessness. The first approach consists of completely ignoring the problem, of living daily life without ever stopping to reflect on the great questions, accepting what happens without questioning why. The second approach consists of taking refuge in pleasure, in the incessant pursuit of material gratifications and hedonism, in trying to anesthetize pain and despair through the search for fleeting pleasures. The third approach, the most extreme, consists of renouncing life itself, of seeing death as the only way out of a meaningless existence, as a refuge from suffering. The fourth approach consists of living in a state of limbo, of recognizing the absurdity of existence, but without acting, without taking a defined position, oscillating between acceptance and rebellion. Tolstoy analyzed each of these approaches in depth, with his usual acuity and lucidity. While understanding their diffusion and logic, none of them offered him a satisfactory answer. They were all incomplete, fragile, temporary solutions, which failed to erode his existential anguish, the inner void that devoured him. But Tolstoy, despite the despair that gripped him, did not give up. And it was by observing the humble lives of the peasants, the simple people who worked the land with sweat and toil, that he made an important discovery, a crucial turning point in his journey. Despite their material poverty and the suffering they had to face daily, these people seemed to find extraordinary strength in faith, a simple faith, without intellectualisms, a trust in something greater than themselves, a hope that sustained them in the most difficult moments. This led him to reconsider the value of faith, not the faith of religious institutions with their hypocrisies and contradictions, but an authentic, deep faith, a direct connection with the divine that manifested itself through sincere prayer and the practice of charity. He understood that faith offered answers where reason failed, that it was not an escape from reality, but a way to embrace it in all its nuances, finding purpose and meaning even in suffering, in pain, and in death. And this discovery radically changed Tolstoy's life. He abandoned the luxury and wealth that had always surrounded him, began to dress like a peasant, to work the land with his own hands, sharing the toil and joys of the people. He dedicated himself to others, helping the poor and marginalized, seeking happiness not in the possession of material goods, but in serving his neighbor, in practicing justice and compassion. This new path, undertaken with humility and sincerity, brought him an inner peace that neither literary success nor the efforts of reason had ever been able to offer him, a serenity that arose from the awareness of having found his place in the world, of having discovered a deeper meaning for his existence. Tolstoy's experience, his journey into the abyss of the soul, and his return to the light teaches us that the meaning of life is not a mathematical formula to be found in a book, but a path to be undertaken, a continuous and incessant search. A path that often leads us to confront difficult questions with emptiness, with despair, and that forces us to question everything we have taken for granted. But that, in the end, can lead us to a profound discovery, the discovery that the meaning of life is not something to be found outside of us, but something to be built within us, through our actions, our relationships, our faith. And that sometimes the answer is not found in logic or science, but in the ability to see beyond the difficulties, in the connection with others, in faith, whatever form it takes, in love and compassion. Tolstoy's story is an invitation to reflect on the meaning of our existence, not to be afraid to ask ourselves the great questions that often haunt us, and to seek answers that go beyond the appearance, that lead us to live a more authentic life, more full of meaning and hope. And you, what reflections does this story evoke? What is your answer to the great questions of life? Share your opinions in the comments. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to not miss our next videos.